Let's talk about response potential. This is one of the most important concepts you're going to learn in this entire course, and almost nobody understands it. Not the NLP trainers, not the sales gurus, not the persuasion experts. Almost nobody. But Milton Erickson understood it. And since I studied with his eldest daughter, Carol, for years, I'm going to teach it to you the way I learned it. Response potential is the capacity and willingness of a person to take a specific action. It's not just ability. It's not just willingness. It's both, together, at the same time. Let me break that down because this is critical. Ability means they can actually do it. They have the resources. They have the skills. They have the capacity. If you're asking someone to buy something, they have the money. If you're asking someone to implement something, they have the time and the capability. Willingness means they want to do it. They're motivated. They see the value. They're emotionally and psychologically ready to take action. Response potential only exists when both ability and willingness are present. If either one is missing, response potential is zero. And if response potential is zero, no amount of suggestion or command or persuasion is going to make it happen. This is why hypnosis doesn't work the way most people think it works. This is why embedded commands fail. This is why all those language patterns don't produce results. People think hypnosis is about bypassing the conscious mind and implanting suggestions that the person has to follow. Like you're programming a computer, like you're hacking their brain. That is not how it works. What actually happens in effective hypnosis, the kind Erickson did, is that you're working with response potential. You're identifying what the person already has the capacity and willingness to do, and you're facilitating that. You're not creating new behaviors from scratch. You're not overriding their will. You're working with what's already there. Erickson would often spend 10 or more sessions with a client before he even started the formal therapeutic work. Why? Because he was building response potential. He was training them. He was preparing them. He was making sure they had the ability and the willingness to do what needed to be done. Most hypnotists skip this part. They do an induction. They give suggestions, and then they wonder why it doesn't work. And the answer is no response potential. The person either can't do what you're suggesting, or they don't want to do it, or both. So the suggestion just slides off. It doesn't take hold. Now let's bring this into business, into sales, into influence, into leadership. When you're trying to get someone to do something, anything, your first job is to assess response potential. Can they actually do it? Do they want to do it? If the answer to either question is no, your job is not to push harder with language patterns. Your job is to build response potential. How do you build response potential? Two ways. First, you increase ability. You give them the resources they need. You teach them the skills. You remove the obstacles. You make it easier for them to actually do the thing. Second, you increase willingness. You help them see the value. You connect it to their goals. You make it emotionally compelling. You align it with their identity. And here's the key. You do this before you ask them to take action, not during, not after. Before. Most salespeople do it backwards. They make the pitch first. They try to close first. And then when the person says no or hesitates, they try to overcome objections. They try to convince. They try to push. That's not how you build response potential. That's how you create resistance. The right sequence is build response potential first, then make the ask. When response potential is high, the ask is easy. When response potential is low, the ask fails. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're selling high-ticket coaching, $10,000 for 6 months of work. If you pitch that to someone who doesn't have $10,000, there's no ability. Response potential is zero. Doesn't matter how good your pitch is. If you pitch that to someone who has the money but doesn't see the value of coaching, there's no willingness. Response potential is zero. Again, doesn't matter how good your pitch is. But if you pitch that to someone who has the money and who already values coaching and who sees themselves as someone who invests in their growth, response potential is high. The pitch almost doesn't matter. They're ready. So your job is not to convince the first two people. Your job is to find the third person. Or if you're committed to working with the first two, your job is to build response potential over time until they become the third person. That might mean helping them get the money. That might mean educating them on the value of coaching. That might mean working with them in a smaller capacity first to demonstrate value. But you're building response potential. You're not trying to bypass it with clever language. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. Response potential is specific. It's not general. Someone might have high response potential for one thing and zero response potential for something else. They might be ready to spend $10,000 on coaching, but not ready to spend $10,000 on a car. Same money, different response potential. Why? Because the ability might be the same, but the willingness is different. They see coaching as valuable, but they don't care about cars. Or vice versa. This is why generic persuasion techniques don't work. Because response potential is specific to the person, the context, the offer, the timing, everything. You have to assess response potential for this specific thing with this specific person at this specific time. You can't assume. You can't generalize. You have to find out. How do you find out? You ask, you explore, you test. You don't ask, do you want to buy this? That's too direct, too much pressure. You ask exploratory questions. What would it take for you to move forward with something like this? What's missing right now that would need to be in place? On a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you feel to make this kind of investment? These questions help you assess response potential without creating resistance. And here's what's beautiful about this approach. When you focus on building response potential instead of pushing for the close, people trust you more because you're not being pushy. You're not being manipulative. You're actually helping them get ready. And when they are ready, when response potential is high, they buy. Not because you convinced them, but because they're actually ready. This is what Erickson understood. He wasn't trying to force therapeutic change on people who weren't ready. He was building readiness. He was creating the conditions where change became natural and inevitable. And that's what you need to do in business, in sales, in leadership, in influence. Stop trying to force action when there's no response potential. Start building response potential so that action becomes natural. Now, let me tell you what kills response potential. Neediness. When you need the sale, when you're desperate, when you're pushing because you have to hit quota or pay your bills, you're not building response potential. You're destroying it because people can feel your neediness. And neediness communicates that you don't have leverage, that you're not confident, that maybe this isn't as valuable as you're saying it is. Neediness destroys trust. And without trust, there's no willingness. And without willingness, there's no response potential. So you have to manage your own state. You have to come from a place of abundance, not scarcity. You have to genuinely be okay with them saying no. When you're okay with no, when you're focused on finding the right people instead of convincing the wrong people, you build response potential naturally because you're not needy. You're helpful, you're consultative, you're trustworthy. Here's the framework I want you to take away. Before you try to influence anyone to do anything, assess response potential. Can they do it? Do they want to do it? If response potential is low, don't push. Build. Increase ability or increase willingness or both. If response potential is high, you barely have to ask. The action happens naturally. This is what separates the amateurs from the professionals. Amateurs try to close everyone. Professionals build response potential and only ask when it's there. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to force it, when you focus on building response potential instead of closing, your close rates go up. Way up. Because you're only asking people who are actually ready. And when people are ready, they say yes. This is the secret. This is what Erickson knew. This is what almost nobody teaches. Response potential. Build it first. Everything else follows.